Governor DeWine's announcement drew a lot of reaction from parents and coaches. Our digital anchor Stephanie Haney joins us now for just a small sampling of that reaction that she was able to see on social media. Stephanie, I imagine people have strong feelings on both sides of this. What'd you find?
There's a lot of debate going on, Jay. People are debating the safety of fall sports, also the spectator limit, and whether this actually even requires an order. Twitter user Olivia wants to know what makes the governor think fall sports are safe for high schools, and she guesses the season gets called off after just one game because of COVID-19 spread. This person takes issue with any fans being allowed in the stands and says if pro players can't have fans, then high schools should just live stream the games. Mike Norman brings up an interesting point. He wants to know why we need an order to allow something, but says that he supports the end result and says kids are better off playing sports than not. He also thinks it makes sense to restrict attendance to family members. And high school soccer coach A.J. Atkinson admits that he might be biased, but he says that he appreciates DeWine allowing fall sports so that schools can make their own decisions, seeing as how the virus and its spread are impacting different parts of Ohio differently. Now, Atkins brings up a good point that we've talked about a few times here. A yes from DeWine is not the final word on this, just like with the guidance allowing fall sports by the OHSAA, because schools can opt out of sports or even move them to the spring, which is a big takeaway here, Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that brings up a lot of issues. There are some star athletes that play football that also play baseball. They sadly will be forced to pick if their school is one that moves fall sports to spring. Not an ideal situation, and I'm sure it's all up in the air as we move forward. Stephanie, thank you very much. We appreciate that.